Welcome to another episode of the Wandering Watercolor. Let's paint. Okay, so this is the 10th and final page of the Everyday People watercolor coloring book. And I used to have the tutorial for this one. I just don't know what happened to it. One of my customers pointed out that it's no longer on the playlist. So I'm just going to redo it. And it's pretty straightforward. I'm going to use this palette because I've stopped making my own paint, and this palette is pretty accessible pretty much anywhere. I figure people will be able to get a hold of it easily. And also it has nice pigment. It has nice intensity to the colors. This is just the Prang 8-color oval semi-moist watercolor paint. And I use it a lot actually, and especially just for practice if I don't want to use my really expensive paints, but it's still a really good set and you can get it for like $5. As always, you just need a brush, a piece of paper just to test out colors as you're painting, maybe like a little soap dish. This is what I have here just to mix your colors, or just a regular porcelain dish works just fine. And then I have 2 jars of water on the side. That's pretty much all you need. So the first thing I'll go ahead and I'll mix up is the color for the pants. So we'll do that by getting some blue. And actually, a lot of the time it's really useful to wet your paint before you start painting, just because that way, as the paint sits there, it absorbs the moisture and it just makes it easier to work with. You don't have to do that. I just find it a lot easier to work with any paint when I do that. So I'm going to get the blue. I'm also going to get a little purple. That way it'll darken the blue a little bit. And also just a little bit of brown. And the reason for that is blue and brown, when you combine them in the right ratios, they kind of neutralize each other and they make a really nice gray. So even though I don't want this to be a perfect gray, I just wanted to push the blue more towards the gray, kind of like a blue gray. And what I'll do is I'll go ahead and I'll start laying down, just blocking in some of the color here. And what I'm doing is I'm filling in the color. This leg is going to be in more shadow than the other one, the one that's forward. So what I'm doing is I'm adding the paint like this, and oops, see I messed up over there. That's okay. And now I'm just going to rinse my brush, and just with a wet brush, I'm just going to draw out the rest of the color there, just like that. That also kind of makes it look a little bit more like jeans, or like just kind of like, it creates a good gradient for us to go off of. And for this little mistake right here, I'm just gonna grab my moist brush and just kind of rub it in to just take away, dry off the brush, and then pick up the excess. And that's the best way to fix mistakes with watercolor. There'll always be a little bit of a mark on the paper, but that's fine. That's totally fine the way it is right now. And now for everything around, like the environment, we're not actually going to sketch out the environment. What we're going to do is we're just going to create some splatters to suggest that there is an environment. And the way we'll do that is we'll actually get a little bit of black, because this guy is clearly like a businessman or something walking around the city. So we're just going to imagine that the environment itself is a city. And in order to do that, we'll need more of like a gray, kind of like urban setting tones. And we don't want it to be too close to the color of the pants. So to differentiate, we're just going to mix up some kind of like concrete gray, and we'll go ahead and we'll add some splatters just to be expressive. And we're not too worried about the shoes. So what we'll do is I'm gonna do a little bit like this on the side. Do some more on the side this way, just kind of add the texture of the paper by pressing down on the brush. Maybe some splatters like that, a little bit like that, make it look a little more interesting. I'll add a little bit over here just to kind of block out the shape of the guy. And also a little bit over here. And down here. And then we'll just leave it like that. You might ask yourself, like, you might think to yourself, this kind of looks like a mess. And it does right now. But what happens is when the paint dries, it becomes much lighter. And then when we add more color to the rest of the image, it actually helps create contrast between the two. So now we'll go ahead and we'll mix up the color for his jacket. The way we'll do that is we'll grab a little bit of brown. We don't need too much. We need more water, really, because we want it to be lighter. And then some yellow. And then we'll get something close. Let's see. We have our paper on the side here. Something close to that, maybe a little more brown. We want it to be a little more, oh, it's too much brown. We're just gonna rinse that off. Let's see. And see, because we put so much yellow in the mixture, it becomes a little lighter, but also because there's so much water, it's more transparent, so it's easier to layer it. So we can go ahead and this part, we're just going to fill in with a flat wash. So we're just blocking in the color. We're not really trying to get any textures or anything else. We're just blocking it in directly like that. And same with this right here. Just everywhere where the jacket is, we're just filling it just straight in. That's pretty much it. I'm gonna rinse off my brush and just pick up some of the excess pigment here. And you notice how it starts to come together pretty quickly. And now for the skin tone. Skin tones are one of the hardest things to mix together, and that's because people overcomplicate it. You only need a little bit. You need a mixture of a little bit of red. I'm gonna mix it over here on the side. A little bit of red, a little bit of yellow, red and yellow, and you just kind of play around with those ratios. But the other thing is you want to add water to those ratios because you want it to be transparent. If you add too much of either or, it just becomes a very strong orange. And if you want to mute the color a little bit, you can always add a little bit of brown or a little bit of purple. And that'll help kind of tilt it more towards like a darker skin tone or a lighter skin tone. Well, both brown and purple would tilt it more towards a darker skin tone. But if you add more, like a little bit more red, for example, and a little more water, it'll tilt it towards that lighter skin tone, that peachy kind of skin tone. And you can always put in a little bit of orange if you want to. But what we'll do is we'll test that out on the side here. Okay, and that looks okay, but I want it to be a little more, I want to push it more, a little towards orange, because we want it to look a little peachier, basically. And that's probably good right there. That looks like a good skin tone. I'm gonna rinse off my brush a little bit so that it's a little more transparent. And then same thing as when we blocked off the color for the jacket, I'm just going to block in the color for the skin tone. Just wherever the skin should be, I'm just blocking that in. Going to the fingers. It's okay if you go over where the cell phone is a little bit, just because we're just gonna paint right over that. Okay. So all that looks good. And now I'm just gonna dry off my brush and then pick up any excess. I'm gonna rinse off my brush, dry it off completely, And while the paint is still wet, I'm just going to pick up excess color. Just like that. And that looks pretty good. I might pick up a little extra just to put in over here underneath where the goatee is. While that's drying, we can move back to painting some more of the pants. So what we'll do is we'll grab a little more of the blue, wet our brush and grab more blue. Need more water. There we go. So we want to get a good amount of the blue. And then a good amount of the purple. That's nice and dark. Brown. Kind of mix it all together. And then some more blue. There we go. Okay, so that's a really nice dark color. That'll help create those really nice contrasts. So yes, that's perfect. And so now I'm gonna go in and repeat over the top of the previous color. But I'm not going to put as much because I'm trying to emphasize the shadow, but the shadow isn't everywhere on the legs. So back here like that. Then here kind of show the crease a little bit on the side like that. Try not to mess up this time. And all the way down, a little bit of the fold, and that's pretty much it. I'm gonna rinse off my brush, and now with just a slightly damp brush, I'm just gonna go around the edges a little bit because I want to make the edges a little fuzzier, and lay that in like that. And same as here, and maybe just leave it like that. Maybe touch it up a little bit and then just leave it just like that. See, this shadow is bothering me a little bit. I'm going to try to pick up the excess. Okay, let's see. That looks good. Next, we can use the gray mixture that we made for the background, adding a little bit of water to make it more transparent because we don't want it to be very strong. We just want it to be a little light, just like that. We'll go in and add shadow for the undershirt that he's got on. Just kind of like to show, okay, this is just some shadow that's basically where the folds of the undershirt are. Like that, and that's all we're gonna worry about that one. Then for this mixture for the coat, we're going to get a little bit of purple, kind of mix it in. So that looks good. Darkens up the color. A little bit of brown, just to, I mean not brown, blue, just to neutralize it, make it a little. All shadows have a darker, a cooler tone to them, and this looks like a good mixture to lay in the shadows for the jacket. So we'll go in, right, might want to clear up my brush a little bit. I don't want too much paint on it because it'll make it hard to control. So I'm just gonna go in here and just kind of add the detail like that, the folds a little bit like that. Over here, back here. Okay, underneath, down here, and back here where the head is casting a shadow onto the shoulder. And okay, that looks pretty good. I'm gonna rinse my brush. And then the hair. So for the hair, I'm just going to get just straight brown. I'm not really gonna mix it up or anything. And I want it to be a darker tone, and that's perfectly fine. I'm just going to go ahead and block it in. Just like that. Just go slowly. And then the mustache and the goatee accordingly. Take your time. You can actually enlarge the beard a little bit by overlaying a little more color if you wanted to. The eyebrows, you definitely want to go very slow with the very tip of the brush for the detail. That. Okay, that looks good. And rinse our brush. Next, we can focus on the shoes and the little bag that he's got. Now, normally I always try to mix up the darker colors, but because the shoes and the bag are just synthetic, like a synthetic dark gray black color, I'm just using the black directly from, I'm not mixing it with anything else. And I'm adding water to make it a little more transparent. Since we'll do it in 2 layers, the second layer is what will give us the contrasting shadows. So I'm just overlapping it directly like that, and then filling in this. Up here for the strap like that. Maybe add a little bit like it's going up like that. Also a little bit for the phone. That he's holding. Okay, so far so good. And we'll grab a little more black color here. We'll wait for, well, it doesn't have to be completely dry. We can just add a little bit, and actually we'll just let it run through like that, and it'll kind of spread where it's wet and give it an interesting kind of like shadow. And do the same back here. And then the very last thing that we want to do is we want to just do a little bit of outline with a pen. So for example, I can go in where the eyes are, just add a little bit of black here for the pupils, like that. I can also add just a little bit of detail if I want to for the hair. For the hand. And a little bit on the side that's more in shadow. It doesn't have to be everywhere, you can just kind of put detail wherever you want. I try not to overdo it just because it can distract, but just a little bit here and there, I think makes it look nicer. I'll do a little bit down here. And with just a regular old pen, I think watercolor and ink goes together very nicely. And just gonna step back for a moment. Yeah, I think that looks perfect. If you have any questions, leave me a comment. And with that, I'll see you on the next video.